Festival. I'm just putting a link to the Good Business Festival there, because I think anyone that's interested in B Corps and B Corp month will be interested in that event. It's in July in Liverpool this year, and it's a global summit, and it's got some fantastic businesses involved in that. So yeah, definitely an event for everybody to look out for this summer.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Hannah. It's great to be here. By the way, I've noticed someone's got a name Good. I thought, how brilliant is that? A surname Good, Lynn Good.
Yeah, Lynn Good is actually, she's a B leader she's a B leader as well. And B leaders are people who have gone through the training program with B Lab UK to actually help businesses become B Corp certified. So she is good in name and good in nature, Lynn is. So that's, yeah, I'm really glad she's here.
I've turned my camera off momentarily. It'll be back on later, but I've just got stuff going on in the background. Nice to meet you. These two ladies are fabulous, as is Kate. I know Kate from another NGO, another non-profit we work with. So anyway, I'll be quiet and listen to you. So excited for you. This is great that you're doing this.
Okay.
I think you should. I was going to say, Lynn, you should give it a shout out. So I'm part of something called Business Declares, and Lynn is also, and it's encouraging businesses to declare a climate emergency and to commit to net zero. So I'm on the board of that, and Lynn's helping out as well.
Yeah, just doing everything we can, really, aren't we? Left, right, and centre to make a positive difference.
Well, today we're going to kick off and talk about that. So I think we'll start. Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, sounds great. So I'm gonna come off and let Gina run this session with Kate and Linzi. I'm Hannah from Betternotstop. I'm going to be in the chat chatting to you all, and if you've got any questions as well, I'm going to be making sure I come on and ask them for you as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
So thanks everyone. It's great to see some new faces as well. So I'm Gina Mula. I am a founder of a business called MulaShaker. We're a creative collaborative creative agency, and we also work with companies in business transformation. We've also got today two guests. We've got Kate Sandle, who's the Programs and Engagement Director at B Corp UK, and Linzi Boyd, who's author, entrepreneur, global speaker, founder of BoB. And I believe Linzi and Kate have already met. And the reason I asked Linzi and Kate to join us today was really because these are the two communities last year that really helped me see the world through a different lens. B Corp was the reason why I created another company and really made me understand how business could be a good thing, particularly after reading around the likes of Patagonia and Finisterre. And I met Linzi and the BoB community last year, which really helped me deploy the learnings of what it meant to be a business for good. And through weekly educational sessions, I've met a brilliant community of people, and to be honest, probably kept us going through last year. Brilliant community, and really helped us navigate the pandemic through that learning. So I'm really honoured and pleased that Kate and Linzi have joined us today. So B Corp Month is all around celebrating businesses and businesses for good, and B Corp Month centres around the 5 subjects that link to the B Corp assessment, which is workers, customers, environments, community and governance. And today we kick off around what it means to be a good company to your people. So first, I'm going to go straight in, Kate, with you, if that's okay, and ask the big question really: why B Corps? Why better business? And why is that so important today?
Well, they are very, very big questions separately, let alone in one. Okay, so why today, I think, is probably a good place to start, and that kind of loops in why everything else. Today we're recovering from a pandemic, right? We're hopefully on the outward stages of looking what life might look like again, but life certainly won't look the same. and every business has had to adjust, and they've had to rapidly change a lot faster than they ever thought they could. And they've had to really refocus what it means to be a good employer, to look after your staff and your people, to make sure that that work-life balance, which then becomes a blend, which then comes into your home, you know, how do you get the most out of people, and how do you think about how you can engage them? And I think that's so important. And it's been a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of businesses. There's lots of other things that have happened that haven't been great, but I think for most businesses, they've really realized the importance of people, and what it means to have good people. And you know, it's vital, and what links into that is public health and being able to provide support, whether that's mental health support or whether that's just time off or paid leave. So it's brought into fruition, I think, what it means to be a good employer, and I think no business can walk away from that. In addition to that, you've got the climate emergency that we're hearing about all the time, and whether that's from the news and talking about COP26, which is a conference that's happening in November, whether it's the warmest years that we've had on record consistently every single year, whether it's wildfires or whether it's, you know, ocean acidification. There are so many things that are happening. It's so hard to walk away from it. And even if you're not listening to the news, the products that you're buying are shouting about what they're doing really loudly, and whether they are doing it or whether they're doing it to the best of their ability is something that's probably sometimes questioned. But people are talking about how good companies, you know, what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think, you know, there's a need to act. And I think what we see from a B Corp perspective is that the business is the most powerful force on the planet, and if we harness that, we're able to solve some of the world's biggest challenges. And that might seem really bold, but the reason why that we think that is because we recognize that that capitalism is great, but at the moment it's got the wrong operating system. So the way that we work with shareholder primacy, the way that businesses have been run, and primarily actually since the 1970s and not much before, with Milton Friedman writing this kind of seminal article in the New York Times saying the business of business is business, and many other things, people started to shift to believe that actually businesses were only run to make profit for its shareholders. And what we say at B Corp is actually, why don't we change that operating model? Why don't we say that actually if you run for people, planet and profit, then actually you'll be a successful business and you can actually help solve some of these problems. But the reality is that businesses help to create and embed social inequality, racial injustice, the climate crisis. So if we're able to shift that, if we're able to shift the way that businesses operate, if we're able to harness the power that they have, then we can create change. And so the reason why we exist is to not exist in the future, and to hope that we make ourselves redundant. We can engage as many businesses as possible to be able to do that. So, and I realize that's a very long answer, but they were very big questions. The way that we're doing that is, one is a free assessment tool. So you mentioned that. So it's the BIA, the B Impact Assessment, free for anyone to use it, whatever size, sector, location, wherever you are. The kind of the BIA is gated and weighted. So encouraging businesses to understand and take responsibility for their environment and social performance. The other is creating a community. So like-minded businesses coming together to learn from each other, network, and share best practice, celebrate being a B Corp and what makes them a B Corp, as we're doing a B Corp month. And then the kind of so the other bit is the legal change. So not only we're not going to be able to change the world if we don't change the DNA of businesses to benefit. So when you certify, you have to pass this assessment, the BIA, but you've also got to have amend your legal documents. And that's great, and you can do that, but we've actually had to change legislation across the US, in Ecuador, Colombia, British Columbia, Italy. A form of it happens in France, and also we are launching at the end of this month a campaign to change legislation in the UK. So using those two levers of building a community of like-minded organisations, you can show that you work for the benefit of people and planet and still be successful. Looking at government and legislation, how do we create that change? And then using that to formulate and create a movement of businesses all over the world coming together to create change and showcase what it looks like to be a better business.
Fantastic. Brilliant. You could probably go now, Kate. I think you've probably covered.
They were big questions, and I just decided to
That's
tackle them all in that answer.
Really big questions. And just a quick one, everybody. I've popped it in the chat, but I think Kate, Gina and Lindsay are going to mention a lot of resources and tools throughout this workshop. So if you private message me your email address, I'm going to be taking notes and getting all this information together as well, which I can send round to everybody at the end. So feel free to private message me in the chat your email address and I'll get that information over to you.
So Lindsay, over to you. So you have worked with brands for 25 years, a long time. What have you seen that's changed, that's made a difference to you, of why businesses need to move forwards with being purpose-led and what that means to their people? Sorry, Lindsay, you're on mute.
Brilliant question. Thank you, Gina. And Kate, that was fantastic. Thank you. I was like scribbling down notes around what you were saying. It was brilliant. Look, I have only ever built businesses my entire life. I left school at a very young age of 15 and had my first business at the age of 18. And it was in the retail space. And at 21, when I sold that business, I moved into manufacturing distribution and spotted a gap in the market for footwear sneakers. And look, over 4 years, I learned my college course. So I set up 7 distribution channels around the world, and we had the shoes in the design museum, and I sold the business to Caterpillar at 24. And so from that age, I then transferred all that knowledge into, for 17 years, building, renovating and refreshing some of the biggest brands on the high street. And working with, I would used to say, in the morning, I could be working with a business that was desperate for sales. Superga, which you all might wear now, they were a very cool pump brand. And at the time they had 1 distribution channel, a very cool shop in Manchester. And they came to me and they were screaming out that they needed sales. They needed people to buy their shoes. And then in 4 months, turned the business around and got them into 140 retail shops. From G-Star, who were doing very well, but needed to stay in the game and exceed the competition. And then, you know, renovation businesses, which was where I was really known for. I brought businesses back that were dying. So Pringle of Scotland, I brought them back from a golfing brand to a brand on Bond Street. And then from that point, when I got them onto Bond Street, I had a queue of renovation businesses. So Gibbs and Hawkes, Arm & Bassey, Lacoste, Wrangler, all these big businesses that were failing. And Gina, you've been in that world for a number of years and you know that world pretty well. And I have to say, at the age of 11, when I was failing at school, I stood in the kitchen with my mum and I said to my mum, "Mum, I want to leave school." And my mum looked at me like I had 2 heads and she's like, "What, you want to leave school, Lindsay?" And I'm like, yeah, I want to leave school. And she's like, "What are you going to do with your life?" So don't worry, I'm going to be as big as Oprah Winfrey. And look, I saw something in Oprah, right? I mean, can you imagine standing with your mum at 11 in the kitchen and saying to your mum you wanted to leave school because you were going to be as big as Oprah Winfrey? And I saw something in Oprah at the age of 11 and I was like, she is so inspiring. Could I have articulated for you why she did it for me? But there was something about her. I felt she was, you know, she was out there doing purpose in the world and she had this TV network and just everything about her, she oozed. And now I looked back, and particularly 9 years ago, I looked back and I sat with my then business partner and I said to him, "I can't do this anymore. I can't build these businesses just off commercial gain. I am sat here making all these businesses a lot of money. And for what? Why am I doing this? What's it for?" And so 9 years ago, I reflected on that girl that stood in the kitchen with my mum. And I went, okay, I've learnt my college course. I'm now going to start my proper business at age 40. And I decided, 38, and I decided to set my 4th business up, which is BoB. And look, BoB's here to shift the world into a new era through the eyes of brands. I call brands businesses because I came from a consumer background. But really what I'm here to do is to build brands to shift industries to make a positive change in the world. And my whole purpose of living is to be able to create one earth with 1 billion purposes. I genuinely believe that everybody around the world should be seen and heard, no matter where you live or the demographic that you live in. And my second business, which was all about distribution and trade, taught me how if people could trade together, if they could connect in a new way and learn together to grow, and then trade with each other to impact change in the world, we would have a chance of being able to shift this world into a new era. So I set up an earth, a brand new earth, which was the vision of what we had, where we could unite people on this earth. And rather than uniting them on commercial, we would unite them on purpose. And so everybody that came onto the platform announced what their purpose was and what they stand for, what they want to be known for. And we were able to start connecting these people, whether they were small, large, 220 million, or, you know, early stage growth, whether they were in engineering or accounting, or whether they were high growth, high tech, fashion brand. All these industries were coming together, and we were starting to connect them and teach them how to shift their business over from 20th century thinking to 21st century thinking. And I knew that on one level, if you could connect them to unite on purpose, but if you could shift the mindset over of a business from unlearning to relearn, so they could remodel their business for growth on purpose, then you could connect each business together, connect each purpose footprint together to be able to trade to impact change. And that meant moving industries from what we describe as silo to integrated. It meant, rather than the I conversation around purpose, which started in 1990, when people started asking why were people manufacturing stuff in these factories? And then at 2010, Simon Sinek came out and started asking why, and he put it into the mainstream. He started putting purpose into mainstream, where people started building their business around a why. The trend moved then, and we're now in the who era, which is the emotional connection with the customer. And that conversation has moved from I, which is I'm building my business around purpose, to we coming together and being able to move an industry, move society, or even move a world humanity issue. And so, look, we stand for being able to bring businesses together. But my belief is that, and I love B Corp, because B Corp enables you to be able to understand your certification, to bring purpose to the table, to be able to create a common language in that space. And what we're able to do is then build the education curriculum that sits behind the business, and actually shift the business over from 20th century thinking to 21st century thinking. And look, we've had about 5,500 businesses come through since 2016. But what I would say, during the pandemic, we had in about 8 weeks over 2,000 businesses come around us. And we slowly started teaching businesses, and I can see some friendly faces, Andrew, Lisa, there's some friendly faces from our community, Liz, and they're in the chat today. And many of our businesses came through and they were dropping 90, 100% in revenue. Some of them had flatlined, and some of them were actually doing very well, but they couldn't sustain the growth. And when we started moving these businesses through the program, the one thing that I would say is everybody had a common language. The mindset shift changed. And because of that, they were able to move it internally inside their organization, to shift the mindset over of the people inside the organization and align them with their vision and purpose, and then shift the business model over. And what that does is then align not only yourself, it aligns the internal people, and it aligns the client base. Because now when you go out, you're leading with a human response, you're leading with purpose, planet, people, as you just heard from Kate, and you're driving that into the commercial business model. So it's okay to make money. We talk about profit beyond purpose, legacy beyond fame. We are up for you making money. I've made a lot of businesses money over the last 27 years, but lead with purpose and drive it into the commercial business model, and not leading with just commercials from a sales perspective. I don't know if you want, Gina, if you want me to, if you have another question, or if you want me to continue, or if anybody's got any questions in the chat box that you'd like to ask as we're going through this, because we're more than happy to answer any questions as we're going through the talk, because I know sometimes you're sat there and you've got a burning question. So do ask any questions in the chat box for us and we'll pick it up.
Thanks, Lindsay, that's great. I just want to go back to Kate, if that's okay. Kate, one of the things that we learned on the B Leaders course actually was how phenomenally fast B Corp certification has increased in the UK. I think it was something like over 600% in 2020. So there's obviously, as Lindsay said, there's this huge shift in how people view business. And obviously events of 2020, particularly the pandemic, obviously Black Lives Matter, huge global political, societal changes that have happened globally, obviously had a huge impact on a lot of people in quite a short space of time last year. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as just continuing, or was that a particular spurt for B Corp? How do you see that going forwards?
Yeah, so I've been around for 5 years at B Lab, so that's when we kind of launched back in 2015, and we launched with 62 businesses, which was great and brilliant. We had like 4 more by the end of the year, and that was brilliant. And then, like, 35 more in 2016, and we were like, wow, we're growing so fast, growing at 50% and all of that stuff. And then the last couple of years have happened, and it's like, whoa, okay, yeah, right. This is growth, and we're a charity, and it's very hard to expand when you're a charity and you're not backed by investment. So it's been an interesting couple of years for us, and we are definitely growing our team for sure. We went into the kind of pandemic with a team of 5. We're coming out with a team of 12 or 13. So there's a real shift that's happening, and I think it would be very, naive to say, yes, it will go on forever, but I also don't see what would stop it happening, because the consciousness and the kind of awakening to some extent of people realizing that you can't do things without thinking them through is this shift that's happening. So this way of thinking, of saying, this is my business, this is my supply chain, and that's all it is. Brexit, climate change, an understanding of climate justice, and actually the fact that we need to start taking the load and committing to net zero faster than anyone else. This understanding that we're all interconnected, and Lindsay kind of touched on this idea, and we call it interdependence. So everything's kind of interconnected, like you were saying this, and actually we're just here to be stewards. We're just here to pass on the planet, and we're in a very, very challenging situation where actually, if anyone has children now, like, they're not going to thank us when they're our age. They're actually going to think, what on earth did you do? Like, what did you do to us? What did you do to our future? What did you do to nature? What did you do to the sea? And I think it's a really, really honest reflection that we all need to start really reflecting on the assumptions that we have made in our life and in our businesses, to think that we can just maintain what we've done in the past. And so I do think that growth will keep going, whether it will just be B Corp. At the moment, we're kind of the only one who's thinking about this totally holistically and certifying businesses. But that's not to say that's the only route up the mountain. And we're very, everyone needs to be doing this. So how do we encourage as many people as possible to do it? And that's one of the reasons why we're a charity. We're not here to make money. We just want to create change, and we want to encourage as many people as possible. So yes, I see the growth happening. I don't think we can kind of turn back, but there will be other shocks and other challenges that question priorities and shift things. So we need to keep it at the forefront of everyone's mind, I think.
Thank you. So what can we do? And this is to Lindsay or Kate, actually. So this week is particularly about your workers, your employees, the people within your company. How do we how do we shift the mindset of those people who have a job, who work, you know, have needs, need to have a salary? How do we shift people's mindsets into thinking about it's not just work, it's more than that? So it's not just a question for the employer, but it's also a question for the employee. How do we get this mind shift change when people are working for somebody? You know, how do we do that? Again, sorry, big question, but
who would you like to answer?
It starts with individuals. So how do we move that forward?
Do you want?
Go for it, Lindsay.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, well, look, we look at it in different ways. So what we talk about is the macro voice of the people, the micro voice of the people and the macro voice of the business. And what typically used to happen in a market was you would take your brand externally and you would bring your culture internally. And that's been the case over that was the trend for the last 20 years. And the trend and what we've been teaching people now is to bring your brand internally and take your culture externally. And that's a very different mindset as what people are doing at the moment. And the reason why you would do that is to bring your business into a different operational structure, so that you're no longer leading in a hierarchical structure, but you're leading in a community structure. So the community structure means that you are now leading with your people, and you're not just leading with the hierarchy of the business, the CEO, the C-suite, the kind of people that people see in this light. Let me explain what that means and why you would do that. So first off, when you bring your business brand, as I would describe it, internally, you're no longer treating your brand as a branding exercise. You're treating your brand as the whole of the business model. And what you're doing is you're leading your brand internally and explaining to the business the today, tomorrow, future picture of the whole of the organization. What's the vision? Where are you driving it to? And how are you leading with purpose to be able to lead that change? You're then showing them, and I loved what you said, Kate, you're also showing them how to lead with a foundation and a commercial vehicle, and not just leading with commercial. And you are able to design a foundation at the top and a commercial vehicle underneath, so that you can have a circular business model that enables you to give at the front. If you've got a commercial vehicle at the back, the commercial business model is able to give up to the foundation. And so you're able to do good from the internal side of the business, as well as the foundation going out and doing good and giving to others. What that does is you align your business with the business model of what you're trying to do in the world. So if we're here to shift the world into a new era, we need to explain to our business, what does that mean? What's the today picture? What's the future picture? And how are we building the business tomorrow to create that bridge between today and the future? The second layer then is the micro voices of the people. People often try and align these voices with that brand, and that's called culture. So you'll say, I want to align my culture. I need to align my culture with the purpose of the organization. They will go out and then talk about our culture, our purpose. What we teach people is to actually understand what is the purpose of each individual person inside that organization. What do they stand for? What do they want to be known for? How do they want to come across? And how do you align that with themselves? And when you do that, you get each individual person to remember who they are, what they're here to do, and what their purpose is. What that creates is what we call brand culture, because then you're aligning all the people's voices and what they stand for with the business voice, the macro voice of the brand. And we call that brand culture, because then what you're able to do is see internally, what do the individual people stand for? And then they can go out with their own voice, talking about their own purpose. And so if you've got somebody in a business that really stands and cares about women in the workplace and community, and we had somebody recently, we had 57 people from an organization that I taught, and this was the exec that worked for the CEO. so the PA, the exec that worked for the CEO, and she stood up and said, massively passionate about women in the workplace. I'm massively passionate about community. And I turned around to the CEO, who was also on the program for 10 weeks. And I said, were you aware of that? And he said, I didn't have a clue. And I went, do you think if she went out and engaged her network in the marketplace and talked about women in the workplace and the community and what that stood for, would that be a good thing for your business? And he said, that would be great. And what I highlighted was there are many different people that work in the organization and they sit with a demographic. So this lady had a strong women's network. Somebody else might have a strong Z-Gen network. Somebody else might have a strong financial network. Everybody is a channel to market, but everybody is a purpose. When you align the people voices of the organization, you are empowering every single one of those people to be an individual and to stand for what they care about and what their purpose is. And then you're aligning them with the business purpose of the organization after they've figured out who they are and what theirs is. And that provides you with a brand culture, because then you're able to see and go, well, from one level, wow, if they are that passionate about that, have I got them in the right role? Do they want to be doing something different? Would we want to create social media presence around them? Would we build something around them? And we're able to allow everybody to have a face and a voice. And what that also does is create retention in workplace. So purpose is proven now, you just need to Google it, there's loads of data, that purpose creates retention, and it also creates retention from millennials. And so when you do this now, every person in the organization is empowered. And so they'll tend to stay in a role longer because they're empowered around not only their purpose, but also the purpose of the organization. And when you align the two with the micro voice of this person and then the business voice of the purpose of the organization, and they are aligned and they're singing to each other, now you have brand culture alignment, and now you align on both sides, the person's purpose and the business purpose.
Thanks, Lindsay. You got anything
just to feed into that, because I think that's super interesting just to listen to and kind of reflect on. And I think the other thing that we're and I don't know whether I should be saying this with my B Corp hat on, but we are often there's I agree, every business should have a purpose, they should understand why they exist, but I also think we can't always we can't meet we kind of need to meet to some extent people where they are, we need to bring them with us, but also we can't spread ourselves too thinly. So I advise, or I'm on the board of a alcohol-free brand, and they were like a startup, and they were like, okay, so what are we going to do? What's our purpose? You know? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, who are you? Like, why do you exist? And they were like, oh, well, I said, okay, what do you do? Do you do anything in your spare time? And you know, and for them it ended up being mentoring, and actually they're a like really young alcohol-free brand, and now actually in the pandemic, when you know so many graduates can't find roles and people just, you know, it's so hard for younger people, actually their purpose has become really prevalent, and they've managed to really leverage that, which is brilliant. But I also think to some extent, actually, you know, you can be a really good business, you can just do things really well, and you don't have to be trying to talk to a bigger, stronger vision, right? So there are social enterprises, and their purpose is to solve a social or environmental problem, or there are people who like give away money to charity, which is great, but actually how do you just integrate that into your business and your business function? So how do you source locally? How do you reduce your carbon emissions? How do you pay a living wage? How do you know, it's about like the operations and the running of the business that kind of also maintains that authenticity, because the decisions that you make when you're setting up a business and the way that you do things means so much more, because it's not about the external facing things, it's not about the volunteering opportunities, it's not about you know, how you donate money or whatever. Actually, it's about how you run that's what's going to change the world. That's how we're going to create change, is by embedding it into businesses. And for so long, kind of, especially when I was starting out, CSR was the thing, and everyone was like, have a CSR department, and isn't that great? And they're like, CSR, I remember the conversation, CSR is dead. And anyone who works in kind of CSR is like, oh, what is the business covering up of what they're doing, and how does it get integrated into their operations and how they operate? And I think that's always important, as you're building businesses, to really think about embedding this very deeply into every decision that you make, rather than having someone else kind of cover up for the mistakes that you may have made, or trying to counterbalance the fact that you don't pay your cleaners a living wage and you donate to shelter or whatever.
100%. Can I just because obviously Gina knows us so well, and so does I'm looking at Andrew and Lisa and so forth, and we talk about driving it into the end-to-end of the business model. And what we say to people is, this is not about whether you're going out and going to save the world. So you might be doing this on a business level, and you find your purpose, and your purpose might be something just on a small level that's really driving in. And that's brilliant for where you are. You might go up to the industry layer, the societal layer, or you might go up to the world layer. But that's the external point. The internal point is you must drive it into the end-to-end of the whole of the business model. And I absolutely want to applaud what you said about the CSR, because we've been saying the same thing. People have been putting it over here and going, oh, we've got this CSR program, and we're like, it's just nonsense. Because the fact of the matter is, what you're needing to do is drive this through your supply chain. That means every single thing that you're doing, and transparent supply chain is going to be something that is going to be, it's a trend that's already started. The younger generation is now scratching behind. They no longer want to see a purpose-led marketing strapline, and then they scratch the surface of the business and they go, ooh, ouch. They don't look after the people very well, and they're not using that factory well, and ooh, let's have a look at how they're doing their accounts. And so it's driven into absolutely, it's the end-to-end of the business model and the end-to-end of the supply chain. So what you're doing internally and how you're delivering your wares to the market. And I just wanted to acknowledge that of you, Kate, because it's what a massive, massive piece. And obviously then there's a play on what your purpose is and what you stand for. But we teach that it goes into the business model. It's not left out as a marketing strapline or a purpose-led something that is really actually not driven into anything that you're doing.
Thanks, Lindsay. The Better Business Act, Kate, which is the real goal for B Corp in 2021. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it really pushes the B Corp mission much, much further, doesn't it? Can you just explain a bit more, please?
Yeah, of course I can. And we are launching it with a media launch on the 24th of March. So although we've been socializing it for a very long time, we're now trying to be a bit quiet about it, so we get a bigger push. So don't tweet any of this yet until the 24th of March. That's my request. So the Better Business Act, this kind of comes back to that shift when I was talking about earlier about the legislation. So yes, you can build a community. Yes, you can provide the tools and the resources for businesses to be better, but we sometimes need a carrot and a stick, right? We need to be able to enable or steward companies from a different perspective to create that change. And so where shareholder, my AirPods are rubbish and I'm just having to swap ears because otherwise it's about to die on me, so apologies.
Sorry, Kate, can't
Believe the purpose. Oh, right, I'm just going to go without them. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, stuff them. Who needs AirPods? Certainly not politicians, apparently. So not always been good. But yeah, so what we're trying to do is upend that whole concept of the purpose of business is to return profits to shareholders. And the way that we want to do that is creating that legislative change so businesses can no longer be held accountable if they're operating for a broader purpose than just returns. And that was a really strong thing in the US. Now, in the UK, we have the Companies Act of 2006. It's relatively flexible, actually. So we are able for businesses to amend their articles and insert a paragraph, essentially, that embeds the idea of people, planet, profit into their heart of their business. Now, it's an option.
and you generally only know about that legal requirement if you become a B Corp or a pending B, and you know, no one really kind of calls it out and pulls it out. So we were kind of reflecting on this, and do we need to introduce secondary legislation so we can create change? And we were thinking about that for a while, enabling businesses, if they wanted to have a material positive impact on people and planet, and to define their purpose, as kind of Linzi has been talking to. And is that enough? Is that enough in the world that we live in? Is it enough for businesses to optionally have a material positive impact on people and planet? Or actually, do we need to mandate it? Do we actually need to ensure that every single business in the UK has guiding principles in the way that they run their business? And actually, when we think about reporting requirements, and we think about the way that businesses are operate, so if they're kind of destroying the planet through the supply chain, if they're not paying a fair wage, or if they're not paying on time their suppliers, or whatever it is, should that business exist? Should it be able to thrive in the world that we live in, when our resources are limited? And that's what the Better Business Act is. It's a way to kind of enable, and we've written what the legislation is, but actually there are just guiding principles around that, which are just mandating that every business defines its purpose and has a material positive impact on people and planet. And the way that we understand that is that they have to report on it every year. Now, this is kind of early stage legislation that we are trying to kind of socialize, mainstream, talk to politicians, get backing for, hopefully get it into the Commons and see what happens. But and it's been, you know, relatively well received at the moment, which is brilliant, and we haven't even properly launched it yet. But it's a way of really shifting the dial when it comes to why businesses exist and what their responsibility is. And also it means it's not a niche thing. It's not something that it's like the best companies are. And you know, we all need to start being more responsible. So hopefully this enables businesses to think about it.
Great, thanks, Kate. One of the things, I was on a B Corp webinar last week, and we were in some breakout rooms, and one guy said, if a business doesn't have a purpose, why does it even exist? And I just thought it was such a powerful question, which totally relates to the Better Business Act and ensuring that there is a reason why, a genuine benefit as to why a business exists. That's great, thank you. We have got less than 15 minutes. If there's anyone else that has any more questions, please let me know. And also, please put in the chat if there are any businesses or organisations that anybody wants to shout out about, who is just doing great work. That would be really good to hear. One of the things that was really interested me last year actually was John Lewis pushed out a manifesto. John Lewis previously, a very kind of people-focused organisation, referred to all the employees as partners. Last year there was a real shift for them when they pushed out their manifesto, and they described themselves actually as a business for good, and really enforced their mission to be much more embedded within the community, as opposed to just be seen as a retailer and as a brand. Do you think that's just going to be the norm for brands and organisations going forwards? Do you think that's ultimately just going to be part of their driver going forwards? And that's to Linzi and Kate.
Do you want to go first?
I did the classic thing of talking to you when I was muted. I was going to say go for it. I was saying go for it, Linzi, which is...
I'm just smiling because I've designed a board game called The Race to Impact the World, which is coming out in July, and John Lewis is buying it from us. So I've had a number of meetings with John Lewis about community, and actually that community sits at the heart of it. And then this morning we ran our webinar. I'm not sure who was on the webinar from the group that was in here. I think Andrew, you were on the webinar this morning, were you? I'm not sure if Lisa was, but We ran the webinar this morning, and the whole webinar was about community, and it was about connecting, learning and trading, and how do you build a new community for a new world. And one of the key messages that we said was every single person will be moving to a community in the next 3 to 5 years, because the reason for that is that everybody has been building a network. So everybody of some description has a network around them, which was offline, and you had a small network, a big network. And what's happened now is people have seen the relevance of community. Even during the pandemic, that trend has sped up because people have lived and thrived in communities always, to be fair. But what happened is it's brought people back to community, because we were all living in community, but it was called a virtual community, which was online and Facebook and LinkedIn and so forth. People have now seen the relevance of back to community with the fusion of nature with technology. That means actually looking to planet first and fusing in technology to help planet. And also, how do we nurture our community together? And that means the only way of doing that is by building community. If we can instill people that it's community on purpose, building a community on purpose, not just building a community, that would mean that people would drive into a space of, I'm building this community on purpose, meaning I'm purposefully thinking about this community and every single thing that's going to go on in here, which brings back to the supply chain and the end to end and so forth. And it also means the silo to integrated piece, which is I'm building this community on purpose, not silo from an ego-driven perspective of I, even my purpose, what I stand for, but moving into a space of we. How do we come together? And this is what we've been advocating. How do we bring businesses together to build community? How do we bring industries together to build community? And that's what our platform is. And what we look to do is to how do we, if the travel industry needs a shift, how do we bring the whole of the travel industry together and lead us into a new era? If the engineering industry needs a shift, and I'm looking at Lisa because we've done a lot of work with her, needs a shift, how do we lead the whole of the engineering industry? And that means we're bringing the industry together in a community and driving that conversation. When you bring leaders together, in business leaders, industry leaders, society leaders in the same space, and you leave your ego at the door and you're able to go, actually, could we bring our businesses together? Could we bring our industry together and make that shift? Then we're doing it on purpose, purposefully, and we're looking at the whole of the supply chain, not just one slither of it. And we're now able to connect the supply chain together and go, great, how do we now move the whole of the supply chain on purpose and build that through a community? So my vision is that's where people will be in 3 years, that people will be moving. Most people, if not everybody, will be looking at a community of some description. The next dial is how do we instill the silo to integrated piece, so it's not still living in a space of I, but we move into a space of we.
Thanks, Lindsay. I just want to make clear I had no idea about Lindsay's board game and John Lewis, by the way. That was...
No, I can't, you said it and I was laughing and going, geez, I've had about 18 months of meetings with John Lewis. Anyway, there you go.
So just pulling it back then to engaging with people in business, what tools are out there? So everybody that's kind of sat here today looking at maybe they're already a B Corp, maybe they're thinking about being a B Corp, maybe they're just a purpose-led business, maybe they want to understand more about what being a purpose-led business is. They work with suppliers, they've got employees. What tools are there either in the B Corp community or outside of the B Corp community that can help companies integrate their employees more so for a long-term sustainable success? What's out there currently that could help them do that? Again, Kate or Lindsay for that one.
Well, gosh, there are, I mean, obviously you've got I have to say the B Impact Assessment is free for anyone to use. It's bimpactassessment.net. And on there are also some links and some resources when we're asking new questions to kind of deep dive into it. I think it also it just sometimes it totally depends, and I'm sure Linzi has lots of resources that she's found, but it's what are you looking into? So are you looking into real shifts in your business, like employee ownership, or the way that you engage? Are you looking to raise the voices of the people in your business, and that are you going to create a board that is representative of the people? Are you trying to just have representation on your board for different people? And there's lots of different ways of kind of thinking through of hearing and listening, and I think they're the kind of the two ultimate things when it starts to engaging. And I think Linzi was saying that you listen to the people and what they're interested in, and be able to meet that. And I think there's something really important about understanding, and there's a matchmaking to be done, right? Because there's the strategy and there's the long-term goals of the business, and then there's also meeting where what people demand. And we even have that within B Lab. There's a young team, and sometimes they haven't worked anywhere else apart from at B Lab, and then we're like, no, we're quite good, guys, we're all right, we do really good things. And so you've got to take people, you've got to meet them where they are, but you've also got to take them with you. And so how do you have open communication and transparency that is beneficial and fruitful, and is something that people can engage with and doesn't baffle them? And I think that's really key. So I think when it comes to resources, and maybe I don't know enough of them, but actually it's about the openness and the listen. It's actually the skills that you deploy, rather than looking for someone to have the answers, because actually every business is different and every employee has different demands.
Thanks, Kate. Linzi, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I love listening to you, Kate, so it's really great. And I'm like, my brain goes every time you say something, I'm like, oh yeah, that and that, and I make some notes. And so it's really great, thank you. Look, what we do, and we're an ed tech platform, right? So we're an education technology platform. That is what we are, the fundamental heart of what we do. And education is the heart of everything that we deliver. And we look at a business and we audit them for growth. So the same way that you've got your tool, we've got a tool that we give to businesses, and they're able to do, we call it their audit for growth, but it's growth on purpose. So we audit you from the brand, the product, the channel, the sales system, and the numbers side of things. And what that does is it allows businesses to see where their gaps are in their business. And why they need that is because businesses, and this is what we teach, are moving from 20th century thinking to 21st century thinking. And this really provides a roadmap for people, very clearly to see, oh my gosh, this is my business on the left, and these are the gaps on the right from the 20th century to 21st century of all the different things I need to look at. Then what you're able to do is make an informed decision based on your business. What modules, what learnings do we need to provide for the next 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, depending on your journey, of what that looks like based on the gaps. And the gaps highlight commercial and cultural. So it's a system where we're able to look at the sales, the awareness, and the valuation. So it does look at how you're going to increase your valuation. And it looks at the legacy, the people, and the purpose. And it aligns the cultural system and the commercial system together. What that allows you to do is then have an informed choice around how are you leading with cultural? What commercial do you need to do? And how are you driving it from a commercial perspective, but also leading with purpose, legacy, and influence? So from our side, what I love is that you've got your tool, and I think we've spoken to Gina about this before, that your tool at the front end is so gorgeous because it allows people to assess and understand the purpose side of things. What ours does is see the gaps in the business for growth on purpose and how they're going to build that out for the next, however long, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, depending on their growth journey.
Thanks, both. That's perfect timing, I think. It's 11:59.
Oof.
Right. That was brilliant. What a fantastic session. Really, really enjoyed listening to Kate and Linzi. Kate, thank you so much. I know it's hugely busy time for you, but yeah, just thank you so much for joining us, and Linzi as well. Thanks for your time. If anybody wants to unmute, ask any final questions, please do. Hannah and I are on board. If anybody's got any specific questions around the B Corp assessment, if anybody's got any questions around being a B Corp, if anybody's got any questions around being a purpose-led business and having other tools around that to help you and embed all those brilliant values, please get in touch. I think Hannah's put lots of contact information in the chat. Hannah,
Yes,
you want to
yeah, I put Gina and I's contact information in the chat. I know a lot of you have already sent me your email addresses, so I've been taking notes of all the amazing stuff that Linzi and Kate have been sharing. So I'll be putting together the notes and the links and everything that's been discussed and sending it in an email to everybody within the next hour or two. I appreciate everybody's time as well. So if you need to drop off now, please feel free to drop off. But as Gina said, Gina and I are around for the next half an hour to ask any specific questions if anyone's got any. But yeah, that's been an absolutely fantastic sessions, and I certainly learned a lot from it as well. So thank you so much to Lisa and Kate for your time. Linzi and Kate for your time, sorry.
Thank you. Can I give a shout out to MSM, because I didn't realise that they were on here. I've got 2 pages of boxes, and I've just seen you in the chat box. So hi guys. There's quite a few of our alumni on here, so it's really gorgeous. Thanks so
Hi,
much.
Linzi, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. And yeah, thank you. I can stay as well for 10 minutes if you want me to hang out just for 10 minutes, and you can unclick and ask whatever question you want. So I'm more than happy to hang out for 10.
Great. And then we've also got a session every single Tuesday at 11 o'clock for the rest of March to go through the different areas of the assessment. And I put a link to the event right there, so you can just kind of book it into your diaries. And I'll also be putting the information on that into the notes as well that I'm sending around today. So thank you everybody for your time. So if anyone did have any questions, feel free to unmute now and ask any specific questions you might have.
It was really good and excellent. Really, really enjoyed it from all 3 of you. Thank you. It was really, really good.
Thank you. And
I will ask you a question. We're as I said in my little note there, we're days away from being B Corp certified. And the only outstanding thing we need to do is change our articles of association. Have you ever had? I mean, and I don't think we have an issue with that whatsoever in principle. But has there ever been any questions? We haven't taken legal advice yet because it's something we legally need to do just to make sure that I'm sure it's all up board. But has there ever been any questions about the legality of the draft articles that you have published?
Yeah, I think that there have been, of course, lots of lawyers who've read kind of the requirement and to think about it, it's the way that they're written, and intentionally so, is to enable a shift in conversation, but actually it's not something that requires a huge shift in the business. What it does enable is conversations and reference points to the fact that you have changed the way that the business wants to operate, because you will consider stakeholder interest when making a decision. So it enables your board members to ask questions, to think that on balance, is this the right decision? And when you break it down like that, it's actually a really simple change that shouldn't have any kind of challenges from a legal perspective to some extent. We have businesses that are, massive private equity funds to very small startups, and they've all made the change to be able to certify. So from any perspective, maybe there's sometimes some questions, but actually we haven't had to amend the requirements since we launched.
Okay. All right.
The Better Business Act is based on that legal requirement, so we're kind of taking that forward.
Great. Okay. No, thank you. Just we're about to get our solicitors to have a look at it and make the change. But just it'd be nice to. Thank you. It's nice to hear how other people have done it. But really good. No, we're very excited about it. I think we'll be from what my understanding, will be the second architectural practice in the UK to be B Corp.
Yes, you might be the third.
Third, okay.
Might be the third, but still, that's brilliant.
Pretty good. Yeah, we're happy about that. Very happy about that.
Seeing a massive growth in the built environment, and we have a working group around the built environment, so it'd be great to get you involved.
I do. Okay, I'd like to hear more about that. Thank you, Kate.
Yeah. But very much looking forward to having you as part of the community.
Hi, it's Stefan here. I might be able to shed a bit of light on with you, Ken. There, I don't know how long your business has been going. We filed. Gina's been our B leader mentor, and we filed on Friday last week. We put our assessment in. We just changed our articles of association. We've been going for 20 odd years, and our articles of, so I don't know how long you've been going, but there was a big change in
31.
All right. Yeah. So if your articles of association are pre-2016, they'll probably be very different to what the government advised to go into corporations post that.
Right.
So we actually, we didn't take legal advice as such. We just got a load of mentors in business to help us look at it, and accountancy, but we actually just changed our whole articles and brought them more in line with what was going on.
Right.
I personally found the new ones that were done in 2016 far more prescriptive as what you should be doing as a director, as opposed to the ones before. So it was like, oh, brilliant. At long last, I got a cheat sheet. I can just look at this and you can tell me what the hell to do. I found that really useful. So it may be something you might want to have a look at.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Stefan. Yeah, great.
There we go. Great insider knowledge there. And that's the great thing about being a B Corp, actually, is often we defer to our B Corps, who are the people who have the actual experience of doing things and kind of live and breathe what it's like to do and make those changes. So
yeah, exciting.
And what's your business, Stefan?
We're a product design and development studio. So we as I said, I've been working with Gina. We design all sorts of products. I've got a lot of good to make good. I was a principal designer at Hasbro, the toy company. So I've designed and made an awful lot of plastic in my time. So yeah, I mean, our whole business, our staff, our team wanted to wake up in the morning and do stuff for good, better stuff, because we worked on a couple of projects that really just drained us. So we all sat down, and as a team, we had that cultural shift about 2 years ago, and that's where I started learning about B Corp about 2 years ago. So yeah, we've been working. I mean, it's been slow, and then in the last couple of months, it's been a huge acceleration in effort. So yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we're working on is quite exciting. I've got an electric motorbike to the right of me. And we're now also just started work on a project where we're going to reduce energy consumption in homes. So that's the type of project we want to do for good. So the team are like, yeah, that's what I want to get up in the morning and do.
Great.
So that's why we thought we'd do that.
We have a working group on plastics and packaging and circular economy. So there also could be interesting stuff to kind of engage with there. You name it, we're making working groups at the moment. So anything you spot that there's a lack of, we'll be keen, as long as there's demand from the community.
Kate, can we get your contact details? Or Gina, will you distribute those around to everybody or something?
Yeah, no problem. That's fine.
Great. Thank you.
Really what was great about working with Stefan actually was, I think Stefan was doing so much good stuff, and it actually, Stefan, you were telling me about some of the good things you were doing, and then I think there was some of the things you'd just forgotten, and then you were realizing as we talked more about, actually, as a business anyway, you were doing great stuff in terms of giving time, giving resources, educating. So it was really, the assessment was really that opportunity to kind of pull all that into that place, I suppose, and kind of get those boxes ticked.
Yeah, for me, it was, you know, I mean, you guys know what it's like. You're running a business, you've got like clients screaming at you, you've got staff in here, you just, everything's all over here, isn't it? It's just a scatterboard of stuff. And the assessment was, I would say, you know, 90% brilliant for me, because it made me go, right, I can compartmentalize. And I hate compartment. I'm a designer, so compartmentalizing is against my core DNA anyway, right? So I started putting all of this in, and what fell out of that was like going, oh, I didn't realize that if we did that, that's actually in the eyes of other people considered good. We just did it. And then where we got a bit unstuck, which is the 10% of the assessment that we found really tricky, was, well, which compartment does that bit belong to, and which bit, you know, because you're worried about the crossover. And anybody who's designed, you know, click-through stuff like this before, it's impossible to create a system that can cater for all. So I think it's really very, very good. And what Gina and I discussed was, you know, get that in, and then have the opportunity to talk to an assessor to put some of those other points across. Because so what we did is we've marked ourselves down on some points, because we're just worried that if we've bragged about it in any way, we're going to have our legs chopped off come to the assessment. So,
that's not the way that we operate, but it's a great way to think about it, which is like adding value. And you're right, you know, I don't think I used to work in Israeli-Palestinian charity, right? And if we said one thing and either side liked it, we knew we'd done wrong, right? Because you could never. And I think the assessment is a bit like that, right? So like if you think it fits perfectly, there's something probably wrong, because it is one assessment that's gated and weighted, and you know, it just can't fit every size of business and every sector and things. So that it's exactly the right approach. Kind of like keep things with you, ask questions to the assessor. You know, be kind of brutal on yourself, because then it's always great to be rewarded rather than have points taken away, which so many other businesses kind of go through, and you know, think they're at 180 or something. I mean, like, I'm sorry, no, it's very different. So yeah, I'm sure you've done exactly the right thing.
88, I think I submitted on 88 point something, or 87.9 or something like that.
That sounds like a good margin.
And it was like, yeah, but then if you could click some of the boxes that we thought you could get, you could get to, you know, high 90s. But Gina sent through the impact assessment, which I thought report from Ella's Kitchen, you know, how to write, and that was really good. I don't know if anybody else has seen that, but what that basically says, okay, this is a big brand, it's got everything, it's got heritage, you know, it's got kudos, and therefore it has to go a lot deeper than a small business like mine. We've only got 6 employees, but what it does is it makes you go, right, we've got to produce one of these at the end of every year. I've just written articles of association saying I will, even though I don't have to. I'm going to do that because we need to do that, otherwise we can't mentor or track anything. So I think that type of feedback, when you get that, really makes you focus on where. And if they were at 90, right, they've assessed themselves, they're at 90 point something.
Yeah.
You know, if you're above that, you're like, well, hold on, something's not quite right. So, you know, I think that was a real help for me anyway. For sure.
Excellent, great.
I'm going to love you and leave.
I'm going to have to go. So thank you. Great to see you. Lindsay, I'm going to see you a bit later today on the personal brand.
Exactly. I've got a whole day online today, so I'll
see you later.
Thanks so much.
Thanks everybody.
So much,
thanks
Lindsay.
Gina. Thanks Kate and everybody else. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Lots with Gina. Thanks. I absolutely love listening to you, Kate. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, lovely to connect again, Lindsay, and we'll pick up the conversation.